let's look at section 2, and I want to go over a few things, starting with what we mean when we say the mental and the physical. Appia uses these terms, and it's pretty straightforward. When we talk about the mental or mental stuff, we just mean thoughts, beliefs, desires. By desires, we mean things that the person might wish for or want. Philosophers use the term desires. Intentions, ideas, pains, conscious sensations. That's not a full list, but basically any of these mental things that are inside our head and that we're aware of having. And then by the physical or by the material, we mean the brain itself or the body itself, our full bodies, or the nervous system. We could mean also organs, arms, legs, torsos. And then, of course, also we mean things out there in the world. Desks, chairs, trees, so on and so forth. All that stuff is physical stuff. Okay, now on page 6, we get introduced to Descartes stuff and to dualism. And so when we're talking about dualism, the important thing is that the mind and the body, so I'm looking here, are two different kinds of things. What Descartes and what we still today, when we're talking about dualism, call two different substances. And the difference between these two substances, if we look at the top of page 7 here, is the essential differences between material things and minds are, one, that minds think, whereas matter does not, and two, the material things take up space, whereas minds do not. And if we look back at the quote there, we see on top of page 6 just that Descartes here says that his mind has no need for any place to exist. So this is a pretty big difference, and it's important to take it seriously so we understand kind of what is going on with dualism. When we're talking about our mind, so the mind would just be all this stuff put together. But when we're talking about the mind or any aspect of it, a belief, say, and we're talking about dualism, as we're talking about the mind in the way Descartes did, then we mean that this belief has no mass, no charge, no location, and of course, on the other hand, the brain and the body and everything else, those things do have mass. They have weight and all that stuff. They're located somewhere, and they have all other kinds of physical properties. Okay, now on the top of page 6, Appia gets into what's sort of the obvious problem for dualism. That is, we have mental things that are non-physical. Nothing about them include any of the physical qualities that we see and interact with in the world. Then it's not that easy to explain how the mental interacts with the physical. That is, how does my desire to raise my hand cause my hand to go up in the air? How does that mental thing interact with my brain such that it has a physical effect? So just what Appia says here on the top of page 8, for anyone who thinks of mind and body as totally distinct, that is, anyone who accepts dualism, needs to offer an answer to two main questions. First, how do mental events cause physical events? How, for example, do our intentions, which are mental, lead to action, which involves physical movements of our body? And then, how do physical events cause mental ones? How, for example, is it possible for physical interaction between our eyes and the light to lead to the sensory experience of vision, which is mental? Okay, so that, as I said, is kind of the straightforward problem for dualism. We have something that has really no physical qualities. How can it interact with things that do have physical qualities, physical properties? Okay, and then below that, so in this paragraph here, we get sort of Descartes' response to that problem, although, as you'll see, it's not totally satisfactory. And then at the bottom of page 8 and on page 9, Appia gives kind of a more technical analysis of the problem, and he gets into his what he calls a causal account of location. Okay, I'm going to skip that, and I want to look at the second half of page 9 and page 10, just so you're kind of clear on what's going on there. Appia goes through this kind of quickly. Okay, so if the mind and the body are different kinds of substances, then there are several different theories about how they interact. Okay, so here I'm on page 9. And, okay, so this is kind of embedded in some other stuff, but, okay, so for Descartes, so here we've got, we're going to go through 4 different types of dualism. And so the first one is this interactionism. That's Descartes' view. Mental and material events interact, even if it is only in the brain. So his view is called interactionism. That's Descartes' view. Now, a second view that Appia mentions here is you could hold that, so if you want to have a different kind of dualism, that mental events have bodily causes but not bodily effects. We'll look at what that means in a second, but this is a real view in philosophy, and it's called epiphenomenalism. Or that mental events have material effects but no material causes. This is kind of just the reverse of epiphenomenalism. We can call this top-down control. Well, that's just a name I made up. This is not really as important a position as the epiphenomenalism. And then fourth is this psychophysical parallelism. Let's see, the description of this here. So on this view, there are corresponding material and mental realms which run in parallel but without any causal interaction. Okay, that's psychophysical parallelism. And then, so on page 10 there, then just right below that, Appia gets into, this paragraph here, this is really just a little too quick to be, it's kind of hard to understand. But here, starting with some new way of distinguishing mind and matter, here is referring, kind of gesturing at what we call property dualism. What we've been talking about is substance dualism, where we have the mind and the body are different kinds of substances. Property dualism says that everything is physical, but some physical things have this special mental property. Okay, but you don't have to worry about that one too much. We're not going to, all it gets is that few sentences, so it's not too important. Okay, but for our 4 types of dualism, or 4 types of substance dualism, the first, interactionism, that's the idea where we have a belief or desire or attention. So I'll just call that a mental state 1, causes a physical, has a physical effect, so the mental state has some effect on the brain, so the brain is going to do, maybe have some effect on another physical state, and that physical state maybe has causes, these arrows are kind of causal interactions, will cause a different mental state. So here we just have mental and physical interacting with each other, so that's interactionism. Epiphenomenalism, the idea here, we have a physical state, so a state of our brain or something going on in our brain, that's going to cause some other state, event in our brain that will cause some, say, third state. Of course, maybe we'll eventually go down the spinal cord there. But then, so some of these physical states are going to cause, at the same time they're having their sort of just straightforward causal interactions, they're also going to cause mental states. So this might cause some belief, or give rise to some belief or some conscious state. This might also, so that's what that looks like. Top-down control, then just sort of be the reverse of that. If you have some mental state, it can cause some physical state. Physical states could then also cause other physical states. And maybe we'll have another mental state here, and that's what's actually causing our third physical state. Okay, so that's what that looks like. And then psychophysical parallelism is, one mental state, belief or desire, causes another one, which causes another one. And then at the same time that all this mental stuff is going on, kind of on one level, we've got physical stuff going on at a different level. Oops. But these two run in parallel, but they never interact. So there's no problem here with the mental and the physical interacting, because they don't, but they have to be synchronized, so that they so they're able to run in parallel. Okay, and then just some other examples here. So this would be the interactionism, and well, this is kind of just what I was able to fit on the slide here. But the idea is we've got physical stuff interacting with mental. It's important when you're thinking about this to keep in mind that the mental are allegedly immaterial, have no mass, they're not anywhere in space, but somehow they're interacting with these physical states. Okay, so that's that. You can look at it as closely as you like. This is the psychophysical parallelism. So here we have the two running in parallel but not interacting. And so kind of the odd thing about this one is that they do stay synchronized. I have a desire for a beer at the same time that my throat is dry. I am consciously aware of looking at a refrigerator at the same time that my eyes are perceiving a refrigerator, and so on and so forth. Okay, then top-down control would be this one. So here, the mental is able to have an effect on physical stuff. It is able to cause physical states of the brain to be in certain ways. The odd thing here is that the mental state, the desire for a beer, isn't caused by, on this picture, it's not caused by, say, a dry throat or whatever. The belief that there's a beer in the refrigerator isn't caused by this memory or anything else going on in the brain. It can have a causal effect, but it's not caused by anything physical. And then our fourth one is epiphenomenalism. So here we've got our kind of whole causal chain of physical stuff, and then whenever appropriate, these physical states give rise to mental states. And so the weird thing here is, say, this desire for a beer isn't having any effect on what the brain is doing. It's just, once it's created, it just hangs out in space, or not in space, not located anywhere, but it just kind of hangs out and doesn't do anything. That's not totally, although this is a legitimate theory in philosophy today, it's not totally appealing, because we do want our mental states to do stuff, to have causal effects on the physical world. Okay, and then the last thing I want to look at, or just show you, on the bottom of page 10 is monism. Appia talks about this briefly. So monism is the view that there's just one thing, not two substances. There's just one substance, the physical substance, so everything is physical. And so our beliefs, desires, we still have minds, we still have mental stuff, but it's identical to the brain, or identical to certain states of the brain. And you can also see more about that. Appia talks about it in section 1.12.